Hey lovelies, I'm back. I haven't done a video for a while because I've had COVID. It's my fourth time riding the beast. So it wasn't so bad this time. I think I've got some natural immunity, pleased to say. But I've needed to rest and just haven't felt like, interacting with anyone even by video. Excuse me, I'm still a bit hoarse from it. So today I wanted to come on and speak to you all about boundaries. Not as a lesson or education about, what boundaries are or anything like that. I just really wanted to speak about what happens when you've been abused as a child and how difficult boundaries are for you as an adult if you've had that abuse, or in fact, if you've had an abusive relationship. Sometimes, even if you found boundaries easier prior to that, you may struggle. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about that and share a little story, a little snippet of a story from when I first fled my lifetime of abuse. So when I first fled a lifetime of abuse, I ended up in a different county to where I had been living, and it was the pandemic. So we were like in and out of lockdown. And I've said in my previous videos, I was absolutely terrified and I didn't have anything. But there came a time when I needed to go and get some food. So I went to get some food at a local supermarket. I came back, parked my car on the car park, which is not allocated parking here. It's just an open car park for anybody who is a resident on this estate. So I parked my car there, thinking nothing of it. Started unpacking my bags, taking them to my flat. And I was already feeling quite shaken because I was just really terrified when I first fled and ended up completely alone in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, as you can imagine, it was pretty terrifying. And I went to take the last bag out the car to go and take it to my flat and put it away. And this man, the car park is like around the back of the houses on the estate. And this man came out of his back gate from his house and ran at me. And I, and I was like, and he was really quite close to me as well. And I was like, like, get back off, it's a pandemic. And he was taller than me and he was stood over me and had his fists clenched at his side. So as you can imagine, somebody that had had all this abuse, my thoughts were, he's going to batter me. Not that he's just going to shout at me, he's going to batter me, because that's what my brain had so many examples of actually happening to me throughout my life. So it couldn't think of any other outcomes. It could only think of those as an outcome. And he said, you can't fucking park there. So I just kind of looked at him and looked at there's this massive sign that says parking for residents. So I said, I've actually lived here. I've just moved. I thought he was just like making a mistake. And he said, I don't fucking care, move. And I went, ah. I threw my bag in the car, drove off, and then there was nowhere to park. I was in a total panic. There's not a lot of parking around here, and you are actually supposed to park on this car park. And also, I was feeling very shaken and very dysregulated anyway in my nervous system. So it wasn't as though I felt able to go and do like a really difficult parking, and then I wasn't quite operating like I normally would, if you will. So I had to, the only place to park it, you're going to laugh at this, it's so typical of me, was down the side of his house. It's the only place. It was the only place. And I checked, and it wasn't like blocking anybody's gates. There was no double parking or anything at the time. So I was like, right, I'll just leave it here. It's tough. I mean, he told me to move. It's the only place I can move to. So I parked it there, went home, was absolutely shaken to my core, was sobbing. I was absolutely crying my eyes out. and was thinking to myself, I'm never leaving this flat again in case I see him. And I kept looking out the window because I kept thinking he's going to have watched me come home and then he's going to come after me. Again, this is just the patterns from having been abused, because that kind of thing did happen to me in my old life. So I was very panicked. And here, when the bin men come, our bins get left at the top of the road, they don't bring them back to us. So the bin men had been like a few days later, and I had to go out and collect my bin. And I went to get my bin, and as I started walking, because the bins were like at the top of the road where my car was parked, as I started walking there, I thought, what's that on my car? And I thought, oh my God, no, there's a note on it. Oh my God, I felt like I was going to die. I wanted to just turn around and run back and not have to get my bin, but there wasn't anybody to help me get my bin. And I knew that I was going to have to go to the car and have a look at the note. Well, my car had been keyed down the side, and it had a note on it with black marker pen saying, move your fucking car. It was the same tone as this man, so I knew it was him. And I was like, I don't know where I can move it to. I don't know where the hell I can park. I was really frightened. And also, because it was by his house, I thought he was going to see me come into the car or to get the bin and was going to come out and again might attack me or anything. I was so frightened, honestly, absolutely terrified. But I'll have to move it somewhere. So I managed to find a space, like not on our road, but on another road. I had to park my car on another road. It's just round the corner. It's not like miles away, but and this was because of this man. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell? I was so frightened. And then what came from that was I ended up with something called agoraphobia, which is a fear of getting into situations you can't get out of. Now, of course, it wasn't just this that gave me agoraphobia. It was my lifetime, specifically of rape, really, rather than just the abuse, that gave me this. And I ended up too frightened to even take my bins, like my rubbish out. And I ended up with crisis mental health nurses having to come and help me. And they had my bin right up against my porch door, so I just had to open it a little bit and put my rubbish in, because I was too frightened to go out into my own yard, even, because I was convinced that he was watching me and that he would come and hurt me. Now, nowadays, I go and knock on his door and tell him. And I won't be having any of this, believe you me. But back then, because I'd just left abuse, and my nervous system and my energy field and everything was just all just completely knackered, I could not cope with it at all. So what I want to say is, if you've been abused, particularly as a child, I would definitely say that child abuse makes boundaries harder than any other abuse. Then it's likely that sticking up for yourself, saying no to people, anything like that, you will be too terrified of the consequences, because in your mind, it's only got examples of terrible consequences for you trying to stick up for yourself, trying to have any kind of identity, trying to take up space, making noise, things like that. Because as a child, you will have had your head kicked in or something terrible done to you as a consequence of those things. And so if that's happened, holding a boundary will feel like you are going to die at the time that you do it. And so this is how it felt to me. And I just wanted to curl up in a ball and die rather than have to face what was happening. Now, what I really want to say here is, it's not wrong if you can't just go and sort them out and tell them and stick up for yourself and rah, rah, rah. That's not wrong. It's not a failing. It's your brain, your mind, your body, your nervous system, everything working together to try and protect you. So it's actually quite healthy. And what happened with me was, I was too frightened to go outside. or even to take my bins. I had nurses taking my bins out and bringing them back because I could not do it. I was absolutely convinced that he would come out and would hurt me. It took me a very long time to work through that level of fear. But the time it took is not long. So we have a tendency to judge ourselves and to want to be perfect and want to be getting everything right. But sometimes you actually can't. And what was happening quietly behind the scenes in my inner landscape, I was actually cultivating the courage to be able to stand up to him. And even when I eventually did stand up to him, because I did, it still took an insurmountable amount of courage. I can't tell you how much courage it took. Literally shaking, teeth chattering, nervousness. But I did stand up to him. And what actually happened was, one day he'd egged my car and placed another note on it saying, "Why don't you park somewhere fucking else?" And I knew it was him. It was the same pen, same tone. Nobody else ever bothered me. Why would they? Because it's pretty crazy to be bothering somebody like that. I wasn't parked where I shouldn't be. I wasn't blocking anyone. It wasn't illegal. I hadn't done anything wrong. He just decided that I was the new little woman on the street that he could bully. So I sat at home and thought about it and thought, well, first things first, I'm actually going to tell the police. And I'm going to tell them that I think it's him. And the police had said, well, because it's happened a couple of times, it only has to happen a third time, and then it's classed as harassment, and it is actually a criminal offence. So I thought, I'm going to tell him. I'm going to actually tell this man that. So that was the first thing I did, and I was utterly terrified because I thought they're going to go and knock on his door and then he'll know it's me and I've got him in trouble, and all these things go through your mind when you've been abused because you're so used to everything being your fault and you being scapegoated. So rather than me thinking, oh, it was his responsibility and he's the one that's done wrong, I felt like it was all on me to resolve it. But what actually ended up happening was, after I'd been to the police, I thought, well, I could go and knock on his door and tell him, but he's obviously a dangerous person because it's really not normal to be behaving the way he is towards a woman on her own. It tells you everything you need to know about him. And if I went to knock on his door, his garden is completely surrounded by huge shrubs. And I thought, he could drag me inside, he could do anything to me. Nobody would know and nobody would see. And they wouldn't even necessarily hear because it's almost soundproof. There's that much shrubbery in his garden. So I was like, well, I can't really call on his door. And in all honesty, I don't really feel quite brave enough for that. I would now, but this is going back a couple of years when I first left. So what else can I do? And then I remembered that for this kind of local area, there's actually a Facebook Messenger group where you can put things like, I don't know, I'm having some rubbish taken by the council tomorrow, so it'll be out on the front, but please don't think I'm fly tipping. The kind of neighbourly messages that you get, that kind of thing. And I thought, I'm actually going to call him out on the group because I can't really safely go to his house and call him out, but I can call him out. So that's what I did. I actually took photographs of what he'd done to my car, called him out, told everybody, and also put, I've spoken to the police, and this is now a criminal offence classed as harassment. One more thing and I will be pressing charges. And I've kept the notes just in case. Anyway, what actually happened, honestly, he moved. He moved house. Which, I'm not saying that would happen for everybody. That's quite a dramatic shift. But sometimes the universe is actually trying to call you into action and it doesn't feel safe and you're frightened, but that doesn't mean that it's not safe. And often if you do it, it can shift the energy so dramatically that something changes. Yeah, and he doesn't live here now. He's left. He left. But I needed the time to cultivate the courage, and maybe you do too. And that is the thing with boundaries when you've been abused. You can't go at them the way somebody who hasn't been abused goes at them. I mean, you will have noticed in the world, men tend to have really strong boundaries, don't they? They just say no to things if they don't want to do it. But most men haven't had abuse, certainly at the same level that women have. We live with the threat of being killed. We live with that all day, every day. That's what the world that we're born into. Men aren't born into that world. They're born into a different world. So you will notice that their boundaries tend to be stronger and tend to be easier for them. That's a bit of a generalisation, of course. It's not all men. That's saying not all men. But it's not all men. But for the most part, they find it easier if you watch them. They do. They don't think twice about the consequences, whereas women tend to. And so it's not the same for everyone. And it's okay if you've been abused and boundaries are just so difficult and you feel like, I can't say no. I didn't stand up for myself. If somebody's bullying me, I didn't say anything. It's totally understandable after everything that you've been through. And my best advice is not to avoid it. Do what you can. And the most important thing is to be aware of your own capacity to deal with any fallout. Because sometimes if you set a boundary, and again, this is very true for women in particular, if we set a boundary, sometimes people will push against it. Sometimes people see it as a challenge rather than just a no. So we have to know where we're at, and we have to be very in tune with ourselves about whether we've got the capacity to deal with any fallout from it. And that doesn't mean don't do it. It just means do it in your own time and your own way. And in that sense, boundaries need to be a lot more flexible than just a very defensive, strong no. And, sometimes if you've been abused, and I would say this is true for anybody anyway, but true boundaries should be flexible. You should always be tuning in with yourself about, maybe a boundary I had last week has changed. Maybe it has. That kind of thing. Maybe it needs to be stronger. Maybe it needs to be a bit more flexible. And so that was what I learned from that. So I hope this lands with you well. And I hope to come back when my throat is a little bit better. I hope to come back with some more videos. Okay. Go well, go lightly, and go with my love.